Hi, I'm Kat Miller. Thank you so much for joining us today on Passionate Living. We have a very special show in store for you. We're going to meet a gentleman, Bob Cooley, out in Santa Barbara, California, and he's going to share the genius of flexibility, a program that he developed that is breakthrough when it comes to healing old injuries or stored emotion in the body. You're going to absolutely love this segment, so make sure to tune in for that. And also, Melissa Archer is going to join us with a mental fitness moment about loneliness and how to overcome that, especially in this winter season when it might be a little bit bleaker outside than normal. So make sure to stay tuned. Thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to sharing this episode of Passionate Living with you. I would say, Bob, it's great to have you to be here.
Great,
Okay.
great. Yeah, we're in our great studio here in Santa Barbara. It's solar powered, infrared heated, totally green building. Everything in it's green. The kitchen, everybody cooks organic food. It's a great environment. Yeah.
Oh, I love it here. This is one of my favorite places to come when I'm in Santa Barbara.
It's really quiet here. It's really nice.
It's very magical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And tell me a little bit about your journey and what this is, the genius of flexibility. It's changed my life. It really changed the whole structure of my body when I was working at stuff.
Well, it's a pretty old story, so I'm going to make it really quick.
Great.
So I came from a family that very valued movement.
Right.
My sister qualified for the Olympics.
Wow.
So they were really into movement and stuff, and I was really into analyzing movement. And so that's what I did. I went and studied for a while in the medical library, and then I found out that what I wanted to know, nobody knew. And then I got run over by a car at 70 miles an hour as a pedestrian, and then I had to figure it out. So I swam and ran for a number of years, a lot of miles every day.
Right.
And then that made me fit but didn't fix my body.
Right.
So then I made the discovery that muscles actually have to contract when you stretch as opposed to just lengthening a muscle when you stretch and relax.
Right.
Relaxation only happens if you tense. Everybody knows that that's an adult. So as you contract the muscle, when you contract the muscle, lengthen it, that's how you get a change in flexibility. And when that muscle contracts eccentrically, when you stretch it, the muscle releases enzymes that causes transfiguration of the fascia and regeneration of other tissue, because that contracting muscle releases enzymes that causes regeneration of muscle tissue and tendons and ligaments. And for reasons that are not well understood, whichever muscle group you work on also affects that organ associated with that. It's consistent with Chinese medicine.
Wow, right.
So if you had a problem in your bladder, say for example, then this muscle group on the outside back of your leg, if you took scar tissue out of that, by either use self-stretching and stretching that muscle group, or by people assisting you, the scar tissue in your bladder would also change.
Wow.
So you can upgrade your physiological health besides your biomechanical health.
Right.
It's not enough to get rid of the problem. The problem exists because some part of the person not developed. It's like a car. 3 wheels doesn't get a car to move. So fixing the steering wheel or making a better driver doesn't fix it. You have to find out what's broken, what's not developed.
Right.
And when you do that, the person, and people are in pretty good condition actually, they just need a couple parts that are fixed.
So Bob,
Yes.
can you show me a little bit of what you do on my
Well,
body?
Catherine, before we started, you told me you had your allergies.
Yeah.
And we talked about it earlier.
Right.
And that's associated with these muscle groups having too much dense fascia and scar tissue in them. And so if we stretch those out while you contract those muscles, I'll help increase the range of motion while I'll give you the range of motion while you resist. We'll see if we can't get a change in terms of your allergies.
That's great. I love it.
Well, it's not
Thank
great
you.
until it works. Let's find out. Yeah. Okay, Catherine, why don't you lie down here? I'll show you. We're going to go after your lateral quad here.
Okay.
I'm in this position with her because she thinks I'm Magic Mike. I'm just kidding. Here we go. Catherine, we need to stretch out these muscle groups on the outside, lateral aspect of your thigh.
Beautiful.
So when those muscle groups contract, let me bend up your lower leg for a second.
Okay.
When those muscles contract, your knee would kick down into the ground and your lower leg would go that way. So we need the muscles to contract in order to stretch them.
Okay.
So I'm going to resist you first while you're kicking down, just so that you can feel the muscle more.
All
Help
right.
yourself. Kick down towards the ground. Right, and you can feel that on your thigh.
Yeah.
Can we try it once more? But I don't want you to prioritize kicking down here first. I need you to kick down with your knee first and then follow through with your lower leg. Want to help yourself?
You know, it's interesting. As while I got my head down, I thought my allergies would really kick in, but my nose isn't running at all right now.
Right, yes.
It's kind of cool.
Here we go on this side. Worse.
No, I can breathe. My nose isn't running.
Right.
Wow.
So what happens is that these muscle groups on the
It works that fast?
Yeah. So for a regular person like you and I, they're regular people, always 3 trainers are necessary in order to stretch any muscle group in the body.
Right.
Because muscles move the body 3-dimensionally, you need a person for each one of those 3 vectors.
Right.
And it's huge forces. So you can be a 11-year-old girl gymnast, and it takes 3 huge men or additional women and men in order to change that young girl's leg so she can perform. Right. So when I worked with a gymnast once, and he couldn't do gymnastics anymore because he had problems in his body, right. And we stretched him, and he won his event. So see, before your eyes were running, your nose was running, and all we did was do a little quad stretch.
I can't get over it. My mind is blown right now. I'm like, I'm breathing clearly. My
you're
nose
supposed
isn't
to have
running.
that.
It's
Yes,
like,
it's even worse. So psychologically, one of the reasons why
Right.
you have the cold, your stomach is more tense than others, is because you're a little afraid to be as sobering when you're self-expressive with other people. You don't want them to be uncomfortable. You want to stay connected. You want them to view you in a particular way. And so you won't say things to people that are too sobering.
And
I don't have that problem, right?
It's true, and you know what's interesting
Yes.
is this last 2 weeks, there's been a couple people in my life
Yes.
that I really probably should be a lot more sobering with.
Self-expressing with you,
And
sobering,
I
yes.
have not been.
And when you don't do that, then you get an allergy, then it makes your stomach tense.
Well, I just want to come here and live at the studio now and move in. So.
Yeah, we have a lot of people like, we have a state park next to us, can we have a tent, can we move over there? Would you mind if I came every day? I'm like, sure, help yourself.
I may have to come back to Santa Barbara just to spend more time.
Or in Boston, we have a studio in Boston in Copley
That's
Square.
great.
Also.
And you have one in New York too? Or?
No, we didn't. We just did them for a year.
Oh, okay. So
These are our 2 studios
Right.
now.
Okay.
One in Santa Barbara and one in Copley Square in Boston.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Now tell me a little bit about the personality types. You spoke about that.
I think everybody knows a lot about types already, but they
Right.
don't know their types. So don't you remember in high school, you're like, oh, he's not my type, you would say,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Or some guy in a job, a boss goes, that's not the type of person we're looking for.
Right.
So they somehow do know their types. And women that have had children know the kids come out differently.
Right.
So apparently the types of the person is actually a genetic phenomena. When the sperm and egg have union, a personality type is actually created. And then after that, conditioning is what matters. And why does it matter? Because you don't treat a zebra the way you do an elephant. You feed them different foods. Well, people are like that. People are much more different than 2 kinds of animals, and they need very specific conditioning in order to do that. So when I was stretching out a muscle group down the front center of my body once, and then I went outside in Boston, they're very attracted to a Mel Gibson look. Well, I don't look like Mel Gibson, obviously. They're attracted to me in Costa
You're better
Rica.
looking.
They like this in Costa Rica, but they don't like it in Boston. And everybody said hi to me, and I ran home and I found out the muscle group I was stretching was, the Chinese are too uptight to call it that, but it was called conception vessel, which rather limits its function. There's other function to the sexual meridian than that.
Oh, okay.
And so I was actually being more attractive, which is, I'm usually thinking I'm not doing that so much, obviously. And I was like, oh my God, these stretch muscle groups are affecting me psychologically. So then I started stretching muscle groups for long periods of time in order to actually identify how my personality was developed, and in turn into a theory of 16 genetic personality types.
Wow.
And of course, the good news is now 35 years later, 16geniuses.com, anybody can know what type they are for $10.
I love that. That's amazing.
So that's great, and they get really helpful information.
That's great. And then you have a dating site?
Yeah, the answer is that nobody obviously based on divorce rates and everybody looking
Right.
at most of their parents know the relationships didn't work.
Right.
The question is like, people are educated for jobs, they're educated for cars, supplements, food choices, all kinds of things.
Right.
The most important thing is your intimate relationship. And there's no education about it.
None.
And so the question is, if you know about types, any two types of people, when you put them together, could learn about each other's high personality traits and low traits,
Right.
and what that person's like, so you could validate them. But when you put two types together, it creates a type of relationship. So there are 8 couples that have a creative relationship. There are 8 couples out of the 16, very specific coupling, that have a business relationship. Some have an intimate relationship.
Right.
There's all different kinds. And so it'd be very good to know what type. And there's one type in particular that's good for a long-term intimate relationship. And why would that be? Because that type of person is your unconscious type. And so that's why they work for each other. And it's, of course, the other gender inside. So inside of me is somebody like you. You're my balancing type. There's a woman inside of me that has your traits. You're peaceful,
okay.
you're communicative, you like to prioritize, you're great at making connections with people. I have that inside as my unconscious.
Right.
And inside of your type is a male that's associated with, they like quality. Vicuna.
Ah,
Do you know Vicuna?
I don't.
Vicuna is the highest quality cashmere in the world.
Oh,
Yeah.
that feels nice.
Yeah, it comes from Ecuador. It's extraordinary
Right.
fiber. So we're into quality and self-expression, obviously. And we like work. We don't like things that don't work. So that's what types are about. So it's really about, if you know what your genetic type is, it would help you to know like what your kids are like and why they view you the way they do. Because how you view yourself might not be the way your kids view you. That depends on their type. Most people, quite frankly, think everybody else is a less good version of themselves. When in fact, they're really a completely different thing. And they have very different qualities. So if you stop trying to make them a better, something close to what you're like, or even what balances you, which is what most people do in relationships, they're trying to make the other person be a balancing type, and the person's not that type. So in most couple relationships, we train the person to validate the other person's high and low traits, so both people can really acknowledge each other and then acknowledge the type of relationship they're having, so they can keep building each other forward, so they can ultimately be with the person that would really satisfy them. The expression is, I'd rather be with somebody that doesn't need me to be somebody else. See?
I love that.
And that's what the balancing type is.
When I've been stretched, that not only am I taller when I stand up afterwards,
Yes.
and I feel differently,
Yes.
but the way it affects me emotionally, I've had stuff come up where I've had to go home and process a little bit because
Well, the answer to the question is that anytime you've had a trauma, it shows up as damage in the fascial material. And then when you naturally stretch and the muscle contracts and that fascial material is, the trauma is removed out of that, you will then remember that trauma. The problem with the trauma, as horrific as people's traumas are, and I mean horrific, I never initially wanted to even tell people about my car accident because I think the other traumas in the world are so much greater than what happened to me. But the trauma's not the issue for the person. The question is, how did they interface with that trauma?
right,
And 4 things tend to happen. They either stop relating, they stop associating, they stop attaching, or they stop connecting. So now they've turned off the hard drive, and for the rest of their life, one part of them no longer works. Well, that's not going to work. That's going to cause, that's like getting rid of one of the tires on a car. So when you take the dense fascia and scar tissue out of the person, you help them do that. They stretch and you're assisting them. When you do that, that gets the person to reconnect again to the part of themselves. So see, somebody could be sexually abused, and for some people, they would disconnect. Another person would stop attaching, another person would stop associating, another person would stop relating. And so now they're never going to do that. And so then if you do that, that will reconnect them to their intimacy that they lost in that sexual abuse, say. but at the same time, they now start attaching or associating again that they stopped doing with trauma. The problem with trauma is that when it happens to you, how you interface with it is the issue. Your responsibility for that. I'm talking about when somebody abuses you, regardless of your age, how you interfaced is the only way it gets changed. Understanding the trauma won't do it. Knowing what you had going on when it was happening and how you were interfacing, and that stopped certain parts of you from growing. And at that point, if you take that out of whatever the muscle groups are in your body, where that is, you then you're back to where you were when that happened, and you start growing up at a very accelerated rate. Healing is so fast compared to the amount of traumas people have that way. And so that's what it's really about. It's really about you reclaiming parts of yourself that you disconnected from yourself. I'm saying how you interfaced is how we solve that.
What would you tell somebody out there that's watching that's like been on the edge of living their dreams or doing something to make a huge change in their life, and they're just like, what would you tell them to get over that?
Well, from the athletes taught me this lesson. Right. What the athletes told me is that I worked with a ice speed skater that won an event. Right. And when he went in front of the camera and they said, "That was fabulous, how did you do that?" And he goes, "I was thinking of my grandma. I could have never won if I love skating, and that's something I love to do. But until I thought about it for somebody other than myself, besides myself first, I could have never won." So if you want to be successful at the thing you're doing, you have to really make sure you like doing it yourself. And if you do, then you have to have somebody else in mind that you're doing it for besides yourself. And that's what gets you over that hurdle, where instead of sabotaging yourself at the last moment, you will actually be successful. Because they have the information you need to be successful. You've done your part by being interested in it and developing yourself. And now only when you have them in mind does that put your attention on things that you didn't know that you'd need to know to be able to do it.
I love that. Well, thank you so much, Bob. I love this. I love being here with you today.
Okay, it was good.
It was great.
It's good.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, you're welcome.
I love you.
Yeah. Easy, right?
Easy.
Easy to do, right?
Hi, my name is Melissa Archer. Thank you for joining us today here at Passionate Living to have a mental fitness moment. Loneliness, I wanted to chat about today because it is a serious condition, if you will. And it is at the heart of our growing mental health crisis. You know, we're lonely, and I think the pandemic just made it even worse. The isolation from each other, the social isolation from friends, family, and then especially somebody was in the hospital, they couldn't see their family, and it was all for a good reason, to keep us healthy, but it also affected our mental health locally, globally, and we're starting to see the effects of it now. We're seeing increased risk of depression, anxiety, suicide, heart disease, and it's starting to affect our bodies. So we're all about prevention, right? So how can we mitigate the effects or prevent it, or how can we deal with it so that we can get past this? Some ways of doing that is, if you're lonely, talk to someone, whether it's a friend, family, someone at your church or wherever you practice, a neighbor, someone in the store. Just talk to somebody, or if you need to, talk to a healthcare professional. And there's no shame in it, and it's okay. If you see someone that is lonely, reach out to them. We don't lose anything. We actually gain something by saying hello to someone and asking, how are you doing today? And really mean it so that we can find out how they really are doing. Because that hello may have saved someone, to not hurt themselves, or to be, they realize that maybe they're not just by themselves on an island. And so these are some of the things that we can do to try to mitigate the effects of loneliness and to reach out to someone that we see that may be lonely, especially our elderly, especially our sick and shut in, especially someone that you may have seen, you notice a neighbor that hasn't been coming out of the house, or you don't see many people going to their home. So just reach out and be a friend, and hopefully together we can heal each other. Thank you so much for hanging out with me and chatting about loneliness today with our mental fitness moment at Passionate Living. My name is Melissa, and until next time, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Passionate Living. And remember, you can watch us every week at these times below locally if you're in these regions. And also every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube. And you can join us on our social media on Facebook at Passionate Living, Instagram at passionate.living, and TikTok at Cat's Passions. And remember, when you join us on social media, please press like or subscribe and make a comment, because it really helps us in spreading this positive message to the world around us. And we look forward to seeing you next week on a very, very special show about peace that you are not going to want to miss. And it is a very moving, very heartfelt show. So we really look forward to sharing that with you. And thanks again, and until next week, remember to live passionately.